Hello everyone and welcome to Language in Context. I'm Madaria, your host for today's talk show. Today, we'll explore a fascinating question. How does language influence culture? Language is more than just words. It carries identity, values, and meaning. And English as a global language has a powerful role in shaping how we think, interact, and live. To unpack this, I'm joined by two wonderful guests, Tuan Danish and Zidane. Each of them will lead us through a topic, sharing stories, ideas, and even suggestions. At the end, I'll try to bring everything together with some reflection. So let's start then. Tuan Danish, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Valeria. Okay, I like to begin with context. So, what is context? Context is the situation around the language. Without it, words can confuse us. Take the word bank. Is it a river bank, a financial institution, or a verb meaning to trust? Only context can make it clear. And in English, context is vital because so many words have multiple meanings. I'll give you a personal story. When I was in the UK, I asked for rubber. In British English, it meant eraser, but my American friend started laughing because in American English, rubber means something else entirely. That moment taught me context is cultural as well as linguistic. In Malaysia, context gives flavor to English. Take lah. Foreigner always ask, what does love mean? And honestly, it means many things. Agreement, emphasis, even annoyance. But in our context, it softens tones and makes speech more friendly. Okay, here another example. When Malaysians say, have you eaten? It's not always about food. It's a cultural way of showing care. Without understanding the context, someone might misunderstand it as a literal question. This shows that language cannot be separated from the situation and cultures in which it's used. If you ignore the context, you risk miscommunications. But I want to go even further. Context also shapes power. Think about a classroom. If the student uses Manglish in class, the teacher might say, that's wrong, use proper English. But in social settings, Manglish is perfectly fine. So the context of the classroom versus the coffee shop change what considered correct. I believe we need to teach this in schools. Students should learn not just grammar, but when and how to use the English language. Imagine lessons where students role-play scenarios, ordering food at a cafe, debating at a current issue, writing an email to a professor. Each requires different English. My suggestion is clear. Education must go beyond vocabulary test. We need to embed cultural and situational context into English lessons. To summarize my point, context is not decoration. It is the very foundation of meaning. Without it, English becomes a puzzle with missing pieces.
Thank you, Tuan Danish. I love how you show that context isn't just about words, but also culture, relationship, and even power. That was very thought-provoking. Now, let's move to our second speaker, Zidane. Over to you.
Thanks, Badaya. I want to talk about how language shapes culture and identity. First, language is identity. When we speak, we're not just exchanging information. Instead, we are showing who we are. For Malaysians, one of the clearest examples is Manglish. Some people call it broken English, but I see it as creativity. Mixing Malay, English, Chinese dialects, and Tamil isn't a weakness. It's proof of our multicultural identity. Think about it. When a Malaysian says "can lah" or "don't like that lah," it immediately signals who we are. It's cultural identity in action. Language also influences how we think. In Malay, we say makan angin when we go traveling. Literally means it reflects our view of travel as leisure. English says holiday or vacation, focusing more on rest. The words we use reflect how we see the world. But here's where things get complicated. English has become so dominant in Malaysia that many young people feel more comfortable in English than in their own mother tongues. I've met kids who struggle to speak their heritage language, be it Tamil, Mandarin, or even Malay, fluently. That worries me. Language is a carrier of culture. If the language weakens, culture weakens too. At the same time, I don't believe English is the enemy. In fact, bilingualism is a strength. English connects us to the world, while local language keeps us rooted. It's not a question of either or, it's about balance. Let me share another story. I once joined a conference overseas. Everyone was sharing their culture in English. Japanese students talked about sushi, French students about wine, and I thought, what about me? That's when I realized English can be a bridge for me to share Malaysian culture with the world. So, here's my suggestion. Let's use English consciously, not just to copy Western culture, but to showcase our own. Imagine more Malaysian movies in English that highlight our traditions. Imagine more research written in English but focus on Southeast Asia. English should not erase us, it should project us. To me, the risk is real. If we just consume English passively, we may lose our roots. But if we use English actively as a cultural tool, we can stand proudly both locally and globally. So my message is this. Language is not neutral, it shapes our identity, and we must choose whether we let English dominate us or whether we use it to empower ourselves.
Thank you, Zinan. That was powerful, especially your points about English being a bridge, not a replacement. I love how you turn a worry into an opportunity. Before we sum up, let's jump into a quick Q&A session. So, Tuan Anish, you gave a great example of how words like band or rubber can mean very different things depending on context. So how do you think Malaysians, especially students, can train themselves to become more sensitive to context when using English?
Okay, right. That's a very great question. I think the first step is awareness, because students need to realize that English isn't one size fits all. One practical way is through exposure. Watch movies, listen to podcasts, or read materials from different countries. Notice how the same words shift in meaning depending on the situations. The second step is practice. For example, teachers could encourage role-play activities. Students practice ordering food, giving a presentation, or writing an email. Each context demands different vocabulary and tone. Over time, they'll become more flexible and context-aware. And the final step is reflection. After speaking English, ask yourself, did I sound too casual, too formal, or just right? That habit of reflecting may help you grow. So, it's exposure, practice, and reflection. That is how sensitivity to context develops.
Okay, you also mentioned Manglish being fine in social space but less accepted in formal ones. Do you think Manglish should be given more recognition, or should we keep it separate from formal English?
Okay, right. I think language deserves recognition as part of our cultural identity. But we also need to be clear about its boundaries. In casual spaces like mama stores, hanging out with friends, or even certain creative arts, language is beautiful. It reflects our multicultural spirit. But in formal settings like exams, professional emails, or international conferences, we need standard English. So it's not about rejecting language, it's about code switching. Just like how we switch from formal Malay to Bahasa Malay depending on the situation, we can do the same with English. If we teach students the value of both, they won't feel ashamed of English, but they'll also know when to shift to standard English. That balance, I believe, is the healthiest approach.
Thank you, Danish, for your answer. Okay, so now move on to Zidane. I really like your point about English being a bridge, but what do you think is the biggest challenge Malaysians face in keeping that balance? For example, using English while still holding on to their roots.
Well, thanks for the question. For me, the biggest challenge is convenience. English is everywhere, whether it is on social media, in entertainment, or even in higher education. Because it is easier. Many young people slowly abandon their mother tongues without realizing it. The risk is subtle. For example, some kids reply to their parents in English because it feels more natural, and over time, their Malay, Mandarin, or Tamil weakens. That's not intentional disrespect, it is just the pull of convenience. So, the challenge is discipline. Families, schools, and communities need to create spaces where local languages are alive and valued. If not, English will dominate by default. Balance doesn't happen automatically. We have to make the effort to preserve our roots.
Okay, you also shared that experience of representing Malaysia overseas and realizing how English can help share our culture. If you had the chance to create one project, for example like a film, book or event in English to showcase Malaysia to the world, what would it be?
Okay, that's a fun question. Personally, I'd love to see the Netflix style series in English that tells Malaysian stories, our history, legends, and everyday lives. Imagine an international audience watching a drama about Hang Tuah, or even a modern series about life in a Malaysian boarding school, but told in English with our local flavor. Why? Because entertainment travels faster than book textbooks. A series like that would let the world experience our culture, foods, festivals, and humor without needing translation. At the same time, Malaysians watching it would feel proud because they see themselves on the global stage. So yes, if I had the chance, I'd push for storytelling, using English to highlight Malaysian identity instead of hiding it.
Thank you for answering my question. So, we'll move on to the next section. Next, I'd like to open up one of the biggest debates in Malaysia today, the role of English in our education system. For decades, we've gone back and forth. Do we teach science and mathematics in English to prepare students for a global future? Or do we keep them in Malay to strengthen national identity and inclusivity? It is not an easy question. On one hand, English gives us access to international knowledge. On the other, Malay is our national language and unites us as Malaysians. Let's explore this. Tuan Danish, I'll start with you. Why do you think English plays such an important role in education?
Thank you, Adaria. Okay. For me, the answer is clear. English is a gateway to knowledge. Almost all scientific research academic journals, and technological resources are published in English. If Malaysian students are not comfortable with English in subjects like science or math, they'll always face a barrier when they reach higher educations. I'll give an examples. I once mentored a student who was brilliant in physics. He got a scholarship to study in the UK. Academically, he was capable, but when it came to lectures and discussion, he struggled. Not because he didn't understand physics, but because he couldn't process the language quickly enough. It was painful to watch someone with so much potential held back not by intelligence but by language. So, my view is this: teaching in English doesn't mean abandoning the Malay language itself. It means giving the students a tool to survive in a competitive world. The truth is, English is already the language of technology, trade, and science. If we deny students that exposure, we are handicapping them for the better future. To me, it's about opportunity. English will open doors that might otherwise remain closed. That's all from me.
Okay, strong point, Ganesh. So, Incident, what's your take?
Okay, so I see it differently from Ganesh. Yes, English gives access, but we must also ask, access for whom? If you are from an urban family, maybe your parents speak English at home, you watch Netflix, you scroll laptop in English, it feels natural. But for students in rural schools, English isn't part of their daily lives. Suddenly, if math and science are taught in English, they are struggling to understand the subject itself and the language at the same time. That creates inequality. The privileged get ahead while the less privileged fall further behind. Is that fair? Of course not. And then there's the cultural side. If every serious subject is taught in English, students might start to feel that Malay is only for casual conversation, not for science, not for innovation, and not for intellectual debate. That's dangerous. Malay is our national language, our cultural backbone. If we weaken it, we risk weakening our sense of identity as a nation. So yes, English is important, but without safeguards, we risk leaving some Malaysians behind while diluting our own language and culture.
Interesting. So, Tuan Danish highlights global opportunities while Zidan warns of inequality and identity loss. So, let me push this further. Some people say the solution is to promote Malaysian English, our own version, with its local flavor, while still teaching standard English for international use. So, what do you both think?
Okay, from my perspective, I think that's a very practical idea. Malaysian English, or as we call it, Manglish, it isn't wrong. It's just different. It reflects our multicultural roots, our creativity, and our everyday life. But at the same time, students must also master standard English for exams, careers, and for global communication. The key here is code switching. Just like I previously mentioned, we need to know when to use formal Malay and when to use Bahasa Malay. We should always teach students to switch between Manglish and standard English depending on the context. Okay, for example, chatting with a friend, Manglish is fine. Writing a research paper, we must use standard English. If we teach that flexibility, students won't feel ashamed of their local identity, but will also have the tools to succeed globally. In fact, this code switching skills is a skill that being able to adapt language to suit your audience. If we nurture that, Malaysians will not only be bilingual but also bicultural in a sense. we're able to move between our words and language. How about Wisna?
Well, I agree with that balance. In fact, I argue that Malaysian English could even become our soft power. Think about K-pop. Koreans didn't abandon their language. Instead, they use it to promote their culture worldwide. Imagine if Malaysian English with its unique expressions like la, can or not, and don't play became something the world admired. Here's the catch. We need confidence. Too often, Malaysians feel their English isn't good enough, so they stay quiet. I've seen students overseas who speak imperfect English but with confidence and they succeed. Malaysians sometimes know more but stay silent out of fear. So beyond grammar, we need to build cultural pride. If our students can stand up and say, yes, my English sounds Malaysian, but I can still explain science, technology, or history just as well as anyone else, that's real empowerment. Because at the end of the day, language should be a bridge, not a barrier. That's what I think. So, that's it.
Beautiful point, Zidane. Confidence, not just correctness. Let me challenge both of you with a what-if scenario. So, what if Malaysia made bilingual education compulsory, where all students must master both Malay and English at a high level? Is that realistic?
Okay. I think, from my point of view, I think it is realistic, but it requires investment. Teachers in training, resources must be in bilingual, and exam should test both language fairly. If this is done well enough, bilingual educations will give students the best of both worlds, rooted in identity but prepared for the world. We can see some countries like Singapore have managed this. Students there grow up fluent in English and their mother tongue. It's tough but possible. If Malaysia commits to it, we could be one of the strongest bilingual nations in whole Asia. How about you, Sina? What do you think?
Well, that is a very insightful speech. For me, I support bilingualism too, but must be careful not to overload students. Sometimes policies sound great on paper, but in practice, students end up memorizing instead of truly learning. The key is integration, not separation. Don't just have English time and Malay time. Show how both language can live together. For example, using English terms in a Malay essay about science or translating Malay proverbs into English discussion about culture. That way, students see the language as partners, not competitors. If we do well, students will grow seeing themselves not as torn between two languages but enriched by both. Well, that is my point of view. Thank you.
Okay, I love both of the answers. Language as partners and not competitors. So now, let me try to summarize what we've discussed. So, Tuan Danish argued passionately that English is essential as a tool of survival and opportunity. Without it, students risk being cut off from science, technology, and global knowledge. His message is not ignoring English means limiting our future. On the other hand, Zidane reminds us of a danger we often overlook, that English can also divide. If we push it too hard, we risk leaving rural students behind and weakening the prestige of Malay. His message is that without balance, we risk losing inclusivity and identity. Yet, Both of you found a common ground in two ideas. First, code switching, where Malaysian can and should master both standard English and our own Malaysian English, using each where appropriate. Second, bilingualism, that the ideal future is one where Malay keep us rooted while English connect us globally. To me, this debate shows something very important. It's not English versus Malay, it's about harmony. We need policies that don't just promote one language but nurture both. We need confidence in Malaysian English and pride in Malay. We need to see language as not competing but complementing each other. That was balance, where between opportunity and identity, between access and inclusivity, it is the real challenge for Malaysia moving forward. And if we can achieve it, our students won't just be bilingual, they'll be globally competent and locally proud. So, let me end this segment with one final question for both of you. In one sentence, what should Malaysia's guiding principle be when it comes to English and Malay in education?
Okay, let's see. In my opinion, the principles is use English as a bridge to the world, but never let go the Malay language as the crown beneath our feet.
What about you, President?
Okay, so if you ask me, I'd say let Malay carry our roots and let English carry our wings. Together, they can help us stand tall as Malaysians.
Beautifully said, both of you. I think our audience will agree. This is not about English versus Malay or global versus local. It's about finding balance, confidence, and inclusivity. That's the real challenge for Malaysia moving forward. So now, let's wrap this up. From Tuan Danish, we learned that context is everything. Without context, words can confuse or even mislead. His key message was that English education should highlight not only vocabulary and grammar, but also the cultural and situational background that gives words meanings. From Zidane, we learned that language shapes who we are. English can be both a risk and an opportunity. His key message was that English must not be used to replace our identity, but to project it proudly onto the global stage. When we put these insights together, a bigger picture emerges. Language and culture are inseparable. English is not just a subject in school, not just a tool for work. It is a living force that can empower us or diminish us, depending on how we choose to use it. Think about education. Too often, English is taught as a set of rules to memorize. But Tuan Danish reminds us that words live in real life in conversation. If students only learn the grammar, they may pass exam but still struggle to navigate real-world interaction. But if we teach them how English shifts between casual chats, professional emails, and cultural expression, we prepare them for life, not just for grammars. Things about identity. Zidane gave us a powerful reminder that English can slowly overshadow local language if we're not careful. And yet, it can also be a stage, a platform where our Malaysian identity shines. Authors, filmmakers, and everyday speakers can use English to tell Malaysian stories to the world. That balance between connecting globally and staying rooted locally is what we must strive for. And think about choice. It is easy to say, English is dominating us. But the truth is, we have power over language. We decide whether to imitate Western culture blindly or whether to adapt English and make it truly ours. Language doesn't control us. We control language. Finally, think about connection. English is a bridge. One and bridge the world, but the other must remain firmly planted in our soil. If we neglect our roots, the bridge collapses. But if both ends are strong, we can work confidently between cultures, carrying our stories with us. So my conclusion is this: we must embrace English with confidence, but never let go of our cultural pride. Imagine a future where Malaysians use English every day, but that English carries the rhythm of our culture, our idiom, our walk. Imagine international students saying, I want to learn Malaysian English because it reflects such a unique identity. That future is possible if we are intentional. To close, let me echo what our speakers have reminded us today. Use context to give meanings, use language to protect and project identity. And above all, use English not as a replacement, but as a bridge. Before we end, let's hear one final line from each of our guests. Tuan Danish?
Okay. For me, language is not just communication. It is a culture in motion.
Okay, for me, English should open doors, but never close us off from our roots.
Beautifully said. Thank you to Anish and Zinai, and thank you to our viewers. This has been Language in Context. Until next time. Remember, language is not just words. It is culture, power, and identity. Goodbye, everyone.